This is a key on the worksheet on solving linear equations. And on this worksheet, there are 4 problems that you have to solve. Now, make sure you always follow the directions. The direction says this. I need you to show the step where you are multiplying both sides by the LCD in clearing the fractions. So the way I want you to do this is to, at the beginning, multiply both sides by the LCD to clear those fractions. Okay? All right, so I just rewrote the problem over right here. Okay, so you have this linear equation, and you're going to multiply both sides of the linear equation by the least common denominator. So if you look at all your denominators, so in this term here, this 5, 6x, the denominator here is 6. In this term here, the denominator is 3. And over here, that's understood to be a 1, 2 divided by 1. So the smallest number, the least common denominator, the least common multiple, that 3, 1, and 6 go into is 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides by 6. So the next step is this. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the left-hand side. So we get 5, 6x minus a third equal, and then 2. So I just rewrote the equation over. And then we're going to multiply both sides by 6. I want you to notice that on this side, the left-hand side, there are 2 terms, 2 fractions. You can see them. So both of those I'm going to put inside brackets or parentheses, does not matter. And I'm going to multiply this by 2, by 6, at least common denominator 6. This by 6, and then what I do to the left-hand side, I also do to the right-hand side. All right, so the multiplication property of equality. And now the next step is to get rid of those brackets or parentheses by using the distributive property. And so when I use a distributive property, I get this. I get 6 times 5, 6x, so 6 times 5, 6x, minus, subtract, 6 times a third. Okay? Equals, I'm going to leave this as 2 times 6 for right now. All right. Now, remember, the whole purpose of multiplying by the least common denominator is to get these denominators to be factors of 1s. So by clearing the fractions, you're getting these factors in the denominator to be 1s. And so let me go ahead and rewrite this over so I can show you. I'm just rewriting this equation over. And so here's what I mean. 6 divided by 6 is 1. So you see that the denominator now has a factor of 1. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 6 divided by 6 is 1. And then 1 times 5x. 5x divided by 1 is 5x. 1 times 5x is 5x. Minus, subtract. 3 and 3 is 1. 3 and 6 is 2. So the whole point of multiplying by the LCD is to multiply both sides, every term, by a number that is divisible by the denominator. So 6 is divisible by 6. 6 is divisible by 3. Okay? And then 2 times 1 is 2, equal, and then 2 times 6 is 12. All right? So notice I went from an equation, a linear equation that had fractions in it, to a very simple linear equation without fractions. And so now I'm going to use the addition property of equality. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And so I get 5x. When I combine like terms, this is 0. So I get 5x equal 12 plus 2 is 14. And then using the division property of equality, I can, to get x by itself, right now multiplying by 5, so the coefficient of x is 5. So you're going to divide both sides by 5. And so 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times x is x, equal 14 fifths. And so make sure you reduce if possible. 14 fifths cannot be reduced, so there's your answer. If you want to write this as a mixed number, you can as well. So 5 into 14. 5 will go into 14 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10, with a remainder of 4. So you can write it as 2 and 4 fifths. All right, so there's your steps. So those are the steps to solving this linear equation. All right, so let's go ahead and do this now. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this one over. So I have 3 times x minus 1 in the numerator divided by 2 equals 4x minus 3. What I would probably do first here is go ahead and get rid of the parentheses in the numerator. So let's go ahead and distribute first. And so when I distribute, I get 3x minus 3. divided by 2 equals 4x minus 3. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and clear the fractions. So I'm going to clear the fractions by multiplying both sides by the least common denominator. So if you look at this side here, this one fraction that you see, my denominator is 2. If you look at these two terms, each of those is being divided by 1. So the least common denominator, or the least common multiple of 1 and 2, is 2. All right, so now we're going to multiply both sides by 2. Now you got to be careful on this side. So let me go ahead and rewrite this over. I have 3x minus 3 divided by 2 equals 4x minus 3. All right, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2, the least common denominator. So you're going to say times 2. Now be careful. On this side, every term has to be multiplied by 2. So you don't just have one term here, you have 2. 4x and a negative 3. So you have to put that in parentheses because all of this has to be multiplied by 2. So you needed to have done that, otherwise you would have made an error. You would have probably said 4x minus 3, and it's not. I'm sorry, you would have probably said 8x minus 3, and it's not. Now you can distribute, that becomes 8x minus 6. 2 times 3 is 6. All right, so reducing, remember the whole point of multiplying by the LCD is to get these fractions, to clear the fractions, meaning you want those factors to be 1. 2 is divisible by 2. And so now you have 1 times 3x minus 3 is 3x minus 3 equal 2 times 4x is 8x minus 2 times 3 is 6. So that's where we're at. All right. Now let's go ahead and bring the variables to one side, constants to the other. So I went from a linear equation with fractions to a simple linear equation without fractions. So let's just go ahead and subtract 8x from both sides. So let's bring the variables to the left and the constants to the right. Combining like terms, 3x and a negative 8x is a negative 5x. Minus 3 equal, this is 0, 8x minus 8x is 0, 0 and a negative 6 is a negative 6. All right, so I got to isolate the variable term. So right now I'm subtracting 3. The opposite is to add 3 using the addition property of equality. Combining like terms, this is 0. I get negative 5x equals a negative 6 and a positive 3 is a negative 3. Now to get x by itself, right now you're multiplying by negative 5. So the opposite is to divide both sides by a negative 5. A negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1. 1 times x is x, so I get x equal. You have to recognize that a negative divided by negative is a positive. So the answer is 3/5. All right, so that was number 2. Okay, now let's look at number 3. So number 3, we have this equation. So let me go ahead and rewrite this over. So you have 1/4 x plus 2/3 equals x minus a half. All right, so if you look on this side, on the left side, you have two fractions, two terms, 1/4 x and 2/3. And you have the same thing on this side. You have x and a negative 1/2. So you have 4 terms altogether. This denominator is a 4, this denominator is a 3, this right here is a 1, x divided by 1, and this is a 2. So notice there's no parentheses there, so it makes things a little bit easier for you. All you have to do is multiply both sides by the LCD to clear those fractions. So the smallest number, that 4, 3, and 2, and always use the least. You can use a common denominator, any common denominator, but it helps if you use the least common denominator, the smallest. So the least common denominator of 4, 3, and 2, and really 1 is 12. And so now I'm going to, remember a while ago when we had this expression here, I put that in parentheses before I multiplied by 2. You have to do the same thing here. So all of this is multiplied by 12. All of this is multiplied by 12. So you got to put that in parentheses. So you're going to say 12 times 1/4 x plus 2/3 equals 12 times x minus a half. All right, so that was very important you recognize that. Now you're going to clear the parentheses by using the distributive property in both cases, both sides. So you have 12 times 1/4 x. plus 12 times 2/3, right? 12 times 2/3. 12 times a fourth x plus 12 times 2/3 equals, and then 12 times x minus 12 times a half. All right. Now remember, the whole purpose of multiplying both sides by the LCD is to get these factors in the denominators to be ones. So you want to clear those fractions. Let me go ahead and rewrite this over just so I can write on it. So you have 12 times a fourth x plus 12 times 2/3 equals 12x minus 12 times a half, right? Okay, so this is what I mean by clearing those fractions, getting that factor in the denominator to be a 1. So if you're doing this correctly, this LCD will be divisible by this denominator always. So 4 to 4 is 1, 4 to 12 is 3, always. So if you do this correctly, the LCD will be divisible by this denominator, and it is, because 3 to 3 is 1, 12 divided by 3 is 4. Same thing here, 2 to 2 is 1, 2 to 12 is 6. And now let's go ahead and simplify this. 3 times 1x is 3x plus 4 times 2 is 8 equal 12x minus 6 times 1 is 6. So that's where we're at. So now we went from a equation with fractions, a linear equation with fractions, to a very simple linear equation. And so now this looks like a number 2, right? So now the rest is fairly easy. So let's go ahead and in this time, let's bring the 3x to the other side, to the right side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3x from both sides. Notice I'm aligning my like terms. And then we combine like terms. 3x minus 3x is 0. 0 plus 8 is 8 equal. 12x minus 3x is, what's that, 9x minus 6? And then adding 6 to both sides. Adding 6 to both sides. 8 plus 6 is 14. So I get 14 equal. This is 0. 9x and 0 is 9x. And then finally get x by itself. You can divide both sides by that coefficient because you're multiplying by 9. The opposite of multiplying by 9 is to divide by 9. And to get x to be 14/9. And so there's a solution. Okay? And then finally, the last one, number 4. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and kind of separate this. Okay, number 4, let me go ahead and rewrite this over. You have negative 2 times 3x plus 1 divided by 3 equal, in the numerator you have 4 times x minus 3 divided by 2. Okay? All right, now, you could do several things here. I just want you to notice something. You see how this 4 and the 2 are both even? In fact, 4 is divisible by 2. You could reduce this now if you want to. Most students will not see that, but you could say 2 to 2 is 1, 2 to 4 is 2. And that's fine. Most students will not have seen this. They would have left it like this. First thing I would do is distribute first in both cases before multiplying by the LCD. But you do see that the LCD of 3 and 2 is 6, right? So the smallest number, the least common multiple of 3 and 2 is 6. Now you could use any multiple of 6 like 12, but you always want to use the least. So the least is 6. So I'm going to use the least here. So, but when I distribute, I get negative 2 times 3x is a negative 6x. A negative 2 times 1 is a negative 2 divided by 3, right? Equal. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times a negative 3 is a negative 12 divided by 2. And now at this point, look what you have. You have one fraction here and one fraction here. So let me go ahead and rewrite this. I'm going to put that here since I need a little bit more room. Negative 6x minus 2 divided by 3 equal 4x minus 12 divided by 2. All right, so I'm going to multiply this fraction by 6, and I'm going to multiply this fraction by 6. All right, so the least common denominator is 6. So by multiplying both sides by 6, I want you to notice that I will be able to clear those fractions, those denominators, because 6 is divisible by 3. 6 is divisible by 2. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So let me go ahead and rewrite this over just so I can write on it. So let's see. We get, all right, so let's go ahead and reduce. 3 into 3 is 1. So we want a 1 here, right? Like in all the other cases, 1, factor 1, factor 1. So that's clearing the fractions. 3 into 3 is 1. 3 into 6 is 2. 2 into 2 is 1. 2 into 6 is 3. All right, now this is where you got to be careful. So all of this numerator, you see this right here, that negative 6x minus 2 is being divided by 1. So all of this, 6x minus 2, that has to be multiplied by this 2. So you got to put that in parentheses, just like when we had this expression and I was multiplying it by 2, I had to put all that in parentheses. All right? So it was very important you recognize that all of this, every term in this numerator, has to be multiplied by 2. The same thing over here. Every term in that numerator, 4x and a negative 12, has to be multiplied by 3. Okay? So notice I had parentheses to begin with. I distributed. And then at some point I reintroduced parentheses. So now I have to use the distributive property again. So 2 times a negative 6x is a negative 12x. 2 times a negative 2 is a negative 4, equal 3 times 4x is 12x. And then 3 times a negative 12 is a negative 36. All right? Now, let's see. Okay, so that's where we're at, right? So let's go ahead and bring the variable terms to the right-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and add 12x to both sides, just like this. Notice combine like terms. Make sure you say 12x plus 12x on both sides. Combine like terms, a negative 12x and 12x is 0. And I'm going to need more room here. 0 and a negative 4 is a negative 4. Equal. Notice I'm kind of lining my equal signs. Equal. 12x plus 12x is 24x minus 36. Now I'm going to add 36 to both sides, just like this. And so I get negative 4 plus 36 is 32. Equal. Negative 36 and 36 is 0. 24x plus 0 is 24x. And then finally get x by itself. I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 24. So I get, I'm going to put that here, x equal, this is 1, so x equal 32 divided by 24, but you have to reduce. Don't leave it like this. We expect you to reduce. I want you to notice that 32 and 24, the greatest common factor, always use the greatest. It helps. It makes things easier. The greatest common factor of 32 and 24 is 8. So 32 divided by 8 is going to be 4. And then 24 divided by 8 is going to be 3. And so there's your solution. So x equal 3, x equal 4/3 is your solution. Okay? All right, so that is how you're going to solve each equation. So remember, in solving each equation, you're trying to find the value of x that will make this equation a true statement. And so the only value of x that makes this equation a true statement is 14/5. And just remember, and they didn't ask you this, but remember, whenever you have a finite number of solutions, this equation is called a conditional equation. Remember that? Conditional equation. In fact, they're all called conditional equations because you have a finite number of solutions. There's just one. You can count it, one solution. So the real number for x that makes this equation a true statement, the left side equals the right side, is when x equal 3/5. And so there's your solution process to find out what your solution is. All right, and that's it. So that is the key to this worksheet.